Rain hammered the courthouse steps as Ethan Cole pushed through the heavy doors, his collar soaked, his pulse sharp and uneven. Inside, fluorescent lights hummed with a cold stillness. The air felt too clean, too bright, like a place designed to wash emotion off people who walked in carrying more than they could hold.
Understood.
Across the hall, Lily stood alone,
Let's move.
one hand clutching paperwork, the other gripping her coat like armor. Her eyes didn't rise to meet his. Their marriage had already ended in silence. Today was just the paperwork catching up. A simple divorce, the kind clerks barely glanced at before rubber stamping. No drama, no shouting, just two signatures, a whispered goodbye to a life that never quite found its rhythm. But before the judge ever touched his gavel, something shifted, quiet, invisible, like the room itself held a secret no one had spoken aloud. Before we go farther, take one soft breath with me. Stories travel vast distances, and this one might land somewhere close to your own heart. Tell me where you're listening from. Sometimes just knowing we're not alone changes everything. The hallway smelled faintly of old paper and wet coats as Ethan walked toward Lily. His shoes squeaked on the polished tiles, an awkward soundtrack to an ending. He managed a small nod, polite, almost apologetic. She returned it, thin-lipped, eyes reddened not from tears today, but the echoes of nights when tears felt endless. "Morning," he said, voice cracking slightly. "Morning," she whispered back. That was all. 2 syllables each. A worn-out couple that had run out of words long before they ever ran out of love. They had once shared everything. Birthdays, breakfasts, dreams whispered under blankets. But distance had crept in quietly, then thickened until every room in their house felt like a hallway between strangers. Ethan started staying late at work. Lily learned how to sleep with her back, facing the empty space beside her. Now they stood as if they'd never known each other at all. The clerk ushered them into courtroom B, a high ceiling hanging over rows of empty benches. Lily chose the left table, Ethan the right. Their lawyers weren't here. They couldn't afford them. This was just a judge, 2 pens, and the unraveling of a life. Judge Merrick entered, gray beard, tired eyes, but an aura of someone who'd seen too many endings handled badly. He scanned the file, flipping pages methodically. His brow furrowed once, then smoothed. A routine case, his posture implied. He'd sign, they'd leave, and 2 new stories would begin, separate now, strangers once more. Ethan tried not to watch Lily, but something tugged him to glance her way. She was tracing the rim of her ring finger, the spot where a band once lived. He wondered if she still felt its impression the way he did. Ghost jewelry, refusing to disappear. Minutes stretched. Rain pinned itself against the tall windows. The judge cleared his throat. "I just need verbal confirmation for both parties," he said. "You understand the terms. Mutual separation, no spousal support, division of assets as listed." Ethan nodded. "Yes, Your Honor." Lily did too. Yes. It was all painfully civil, painfully calm. 2 people determined to exit gracefully, even if their hearts felt scraped raw. The judge turned another page, this one thicker, attached with a rusty staple. His eyes lingered longer than before. Silence pooled across the room like cold water. Ethan shifted, uneasy. Lily noticed too. Something in Judge Merrick's face had changed. Not confusion, not annoyance. Something softer, almost sorrowful. He looked up at them slowly. "Mr. Cole, Mrs. Cole, I need clarification regarding the property listed here." Ethan blinked. Property? The house, small, aging, with creaky floors and ivy climbing the porch, was their only major asset. "Yes, sir," Ethan said. "It's in my name." We agreed Lily could. The judge raised a hand gently. "According to this deed, it isn't in your name." "Not originally." Ethan's breath snagged. "What do you mean?" "I bought it before the marriage." Judge Merrick adjusted his glasses, voice firm but kind. "It was purchased under your wife's maiden name. She is the original title holder." The words dropped like a stone through Ethan's ribs. Lily's eyes widened, shock, fear, then something like shame. Ethan stared at her, heart pounding. "Lily, why didn't you tell me?" Her lips trembled. The truth sat between them, heavy, unspoken, For the first time in months, something real was breaking through the polite walls they'd built. He wasn't angry yet, just stunned, confused, and beneath that, a wound he didn't have words for. The judge watched quietly, compassion softening his gaze as he prepared to speak again. And that is where the moment hung, still, breathless, just before truth claws its way into the light. I didn't think it mattered anymore, Lily breathed, voice barely holding itself together. The judge didn't interrupt. He simply set the papers down, fingers folded, watching with the patience of someone who knew that the Real story was never written on the forms in front of him. Ethan sank back into his chair. His mind felt like it was trying to catch up with 1,000 moments at once. House hunting, painting the kitchen yellow because Lily said it felt like hope, sealing windows in winter, fixing the old fence. He had always believed it was his house, the one thing he contributed when everything else seemed to crumble. You bought it, Lily said softly, staring at her lap. But the loan officer said I could get a better interest rate under my name, my old name. It was supposed to be temporary. Ethan swallowed. Why didn't we switch it? Her eyes closed as though the question physically hurt. We were going to. And then a life happened. And then we stopped talking about anything important. A clock ticked in the back of the courtroom, loud enough to feel like a heartbeat. Rain still whispered against the glass. For a moment, divorce didn't feel like paperwork. It felt like the slow unfurling of every conversation they never finished. Judge Merrick cleared his throat softly. Just to be clear, Mrs. Cole, legally, the house remains in your possession unless the court directs otherwise. Ethan nodded numbly. Lily gave a tiny jerk of her chin. Agreement, but also fear. The judge continued. Before I finalize division, I want to confirm you both still wish to proceed under these terms. Ethan opened his mouth, but Lily spoke first. Your Honor, she whispered, he can keep it. I won't contest. Ethan snapped his gaze to her. Lily, what? No, you don't have to. It never felt like mine, she said, words shaking loose like loose shingles in a storm. He stared at her, and for the first time in months, saw her, not the shadow of the woman he used to love. She wasn't cold or distant. She was exhausted. A person holding herself together by threads. If you were standing in that cold courtroom with them, what would you have done? Truly, set your pride aside and imagine the weight of that moment. Tell me in the comments. And if you can't find words, maybe just tap like to show that compassion still matters. Ethan leaned forward, elbows pressing into the wood table. Lily, you helped pay for it. You chose the paint colors, the furniture, the dumb floral curtains I said I hated but secretly liked. He let out a breathy, pained laugh. You made a home. Not me. She didn't look up, but her shoulders trembled. Judge Merrick said nothing. He seemed content to let the truth take its own time. I didn't want it, Lily said finally. Not anymore. I can't stay in a house full of echoes. The words hit Ethan like a blunt strike. Not angry, just devastatingly honest. He thought of mornings when they passed each other without touching, nights spent on opposite sides of a bed that suddenly felt a mile wide. I wasn't trying to hide anything, she added through a tightening throat. I just didn't know how to tell you without admitting how far apart we were. Ethan sat very still, hands clasped, knuckles turning white. It wasn't betrayal, it was grief. Quiet, accidental, shared. You should stay, she said. You still have your work, your routine. You won't be alone, he finished. Lily blinked fast. We're both alone already. The judge shifted in his seat, the wood of the bench creaking beneath him. Mr. and Mrs. Cole, many divorces come through here every week. Most are filled with more anger than sadness. His voice warmed. The fact you're still trying not to hurt each other says something. Neither of them spoke. He continued gently. Before I sign anything, I want you to take 5 minutes to step out, talk, and confirm what you really want the settlement to be. Ethan exhaled, tension draining, but uncertainty flooding in behind it. Lily nodded, though she looked like gravity itself was pulling her down. They rose slowly and walked toward the hallway, side by side, but not touching. Two people who once moved as one, now carefully navigating the broken space between them. The hallway felt colder than before. Lights buzzed overhead. A janitor pushed a mop down the far end, humming faintly to himself, as if the world hadn't shifted 2 degrees to the left. Ethan leaned on the wall and rubbed a hand over his face. "Why didn't you correct the deed?" "Why let me think? I thought if I did," Lily said, voice cracking, "you'd feel like the house wasn't yours. Like you didn't provide anything." He froze. "Lily, was that what you thought I felt?" She nodded once, small, heartbreaking. "You come home tired, frustrated. I didn't want to add to that. I thought I was protecting you." Ethan whispered, "You were protecting a version of me I wish I'd never become." Her eyes finally lifted to his. Wet, wounded, they both drew in a shaky breath, standing at the edge of a truth they had never spoken aloud. "We weren't failing because of the house," Ethan murmured. "We were failing because we stopped telling each other the truth." Lily nodded again, slow, deliberate, like she was finally letting herself agree with something she'd denied for too long. And just as Ethan took a step closer, hesitant, unsure, the courtroom door creaked behind them. The courtroom door opened with a soft groan, spilling warm light into the hallway. Judge Merrick stood there, hands folded, giving them a look that wasn't impatient, just quietly encouraging. "Take your time," he said. "When you're ready." The door closed again. Ethan and Lily remained where they were, the space between them charged with unfinished sentences. The janitor's humming drifted away. Somewhere outside, thunder rolled low and distant, like the sky was holding its breath too. Ethan broke the silence first. "I used to think love meant not adding weight to the other person's life," he said. "So I stopped telling you when I was scared." Lily let out a fragile laugh. "I did the same. I stopped telling you when I felt invisible." Their words didn't collide. They landed gently, one after another, finally making a bridge instead of a wall. "Do you remember the night the heater broke?" Ethan asked, eyes unfocused as memory pulled him backward. "It was freezing. We slept in coats." Lily smiled despite herself. "And you kept apologizing like it was your fault winter existed." "You said," he continued, "we'll laugh about this someday." She nodded. I believed it. A quiet realization settled over them. They hadn't stopped loving each other. They had stopped believing they were allowed to need each other. Have you ever had someone help you when no one else would? If yes, write yes, and tell me their name. Sometimes gratitude deserves to be spoken out loud. Ethan pushed off the wall, pacing once, then stopping. "About the house," he said. "I don't want it if it means you leave with nothing." Lily shook her head quickly. "I don't want money. I just want to breathe again." "Then let's change the terms," he said. "We sell it. Split fairly. Clean start for both of us." Her eyebrows knit together. "Are you sure?" "For the first time in a long while," he said quietly, "yes." They stood there, rain muttering against the windows, as something subtle but profound shifted. Not reconciliation, not yet, but respect. Understanding. The kind that came too late to save a marriage, but just in time to save 2 people. Back inside, Judge Merrick listened as they explained the revised agreement. He nodded, scribbled notes, then looked up with something like approval. "This," he said, tapping the papers, "is what resolution looks like." Lily's hands trembled as she signed. Ethan noticed and placed his pen down before reaching across the table, not touching her hand, but close enough to steady the air around it. She finished and slid the paper back. The gavel never slammed. The judge simply signed, dated, and said, "You are legally divorced." The words landed softly. No echo, no explosion, just finality. They walked out together, not as husband and wife, but not as strangers either. Outside, the rain had thinned to a mist. The city smelled clean, rinsed of something heavy. Cars hissed past on wet streets. People hurried under umbrellas, unaware that 2 lives had just quietly realigned. Lily stopped at the curb. "I'm moving closer to my sister," she said. "New job, new apartment." Ethan nodded. "That's good." She hesitated. "I hope you find what you're looking for." He met her eyes. "I think I already did. Just a little late." A beat passed. Then she surprised him, stepping forward, wrapping her arms around him in a brief, careful hug. Not desperate, not clinging, just grateful. "Take care of yourself, Ethan," she whispered. You too, Lily. They parted. Ethan watched her disappear into the crowd, her coat blending into the gray of the city until she was gone. The ache in his chest wasn't sharp anymore. It was dull, manageable, like a bruise you knew would heal. Weeks passed. The house sold faster than expected. Boxes replaced furniture. Echoes gave way to emptiness. Ethan moved into a smaller apartment across town. Bare walls, unfamiliar noises, a fresh start that felt both terrifying and honest. One evening, as he unpacked the last box, his phone buzzed. A message from Lily. I planted something today, it read. A small lemon tree on my balcony. I thought of you. He smiled, really smiled for the first time in a long while. I'm glad, he typed back. Take care of it. I will, she replied. I finally know how. Ethan set the phone down and looked around his new space. The silence wasn't empty. It was open, full of possibility. Outside, the city lights flickered on one by one. And somewhere within that quiet glow, the truth finally settled. Endings didn't always mean failure. Sometimes they were simply the bravest form of honesty. Months later, autumn arrived quietly. Leaves collected along sidewalks like unfinished thoughts, and the city softened into shades of amber and rust. Ethan's new routine settled into place, not comfortable, but steady. Mornings began with strong coffee and the distant sound of traffic. Nights ended with silence that no longer scared him, only reminded him that life was still moving forward, even if he wasn't sure where it was taking him yet. One evening, while walking home from work, he noticed a small community center tucked between a laundromat and a closed-down bookstore. A paper sign taped crookedly to the window read, "Volunteers needed, after-school program." He almost kept walking, but something tugged at him, the same feeling he'd had in the courtroom when the truth finally cracked open. The sense that staying numb was no longer an option. Inside, the building smelled like crayons and old carpet. Laughter echoed from a room down the hall. A woman at the front desk smiled kindly. "You here to help?" Ethan hesitated. "I think so." That's how Tuesdays became something new. He helped kids with math homework he barely remembered, listened to stories that went nowhere, learned names and habits, and small fears. One boy, Noah, always sat apart, hood up, eyes wary. Ethan recognized that posture instantly. It was the look of someone who didn't trust permanence. One night, as Ethan packed up markers, Noah lingered. "You coming back next week?" the boy asked, trying to sound casual. Ethan paused, then nodded. "Yeah, I am." Noah's shoulders dropped a fraction, as if a weight had shifted. "Now it's your turn. Share one small good thing you've done recently. Write it below, so others remember that humanity still lives. Your story might light someone's path tonight." Across town, Lily's life was taking shape in quieter ways. Her apartment was small but bright. The lemon tree on her balcony had grown 2 new leaves. She talked to it while watering, laughing at herself for it. Work felt lighter. She slept better. Some nights were still heavy, but they no longer crushed her chest. One afternoon, while sorting mail, she found an envelope with Ethan's handwriting. Inside was a simple note. "I found something that helps," it read. "Helping kids who feel a little lost. Thought you should know." Lily sat on the edge of her couch, the paper warm in her hands. She didn't feel pain reading it. She felt relief. Gratitude that he was healing too. She wrote back. "I'm glad," she said. "You were always good at seeing people." The seasons shifted again. Winter came with early darkness and sharp wind. One night, Ethan received a call from the community center director. "Noah's been asking for you," she said. "He hasn't shown up in days." Ethan's stomach tightened. "Is he okay?" "We're not sure. His mom's been sick. Hospital." The word hit hard. Ethan drove across town, snow swirling under streetlights. At the hospital, he found Noah sitting alone in a plastic chair, swinging his legs nervously. "Hey," Ethan said softly. Noah looked up, eyes red. "You said you'd come back." "I did," Ethan replied. "I'm here." They sat together in silence. No promises, no speeches, just presence. Later that night, Ethan stepped outside the hospital and called Lily. He hadn't planned to, but some moments demanded honesty. "I think I finally understand something," he said when she answered. "Tell me," she replied. Love isn't about holding on. It's about showing up, even when it's inconvenient, even when you're scared. There was a pause on the line. I think, Lily said slowly, we were showing up the best way we knew how. We just didn't know how to ask for help. Snow fell between them, miles apart, yet strangely aligned. Weeks later, Noah's mother recovered. Life moved forward again. Small victories stacked quietly. One Sunday morning, Ethan received a photo from Lily. The lemon tree, taller now. A single pale bud forming. It's going to bloom, she wrote. Ethan smiled. He typed back, so are you. And as the city breathed around them, both of them understood something they hadn't before. That kindness, once given, didn't disappear. It changed shape. It found new homes. And somewhere ahead, something bigger was still waiting to be revealed. Spring arrived with an unannounced gentleness. Rain softened into light mornings. The city shook off winter like a long-held breath. And on Lily's balcony, the lemon tree bloomed. One fragile white flower opening toward the sun, trembling but alive. Lily stared at it longer than necessary. Something about that bloom felt personal. Like proof. Like forgiveness made visible. That afternoon, she took the day off work. Not for any clear reason, just a quiet instinct telling her to slow down. She made tea, opened windows, let air move through her apartment. While cleaning a drawer she hadn't touched since moving in, her fingers brushed an old folder. Mortgage documents. She frowned. She thought she'd already gone through everything when the house sold. Yet here it was, thick, yellowed, heavy with time. She opened it. And there it was. A payment schedule, highlighted. Dozens of payments circled in pen. Notes scribbled in the margins. Paid early. Ethan short this month. Covered utilities, don't mention. Bonus month, put toward principal. Lily's breath slowed. She flipped pages faster now, heart pounding. Not confusion, but something closer to awe. For years, quietly, consistently, Ethan had been paying more than she ever knew. Covering gaps. Shouldering stress without saying a word. Not because she asked. Because he didn't want her to worry. Her hands began to shake. All that time, she believed she was protecting him by hiding the deed truth. All that time, he was protecting her by hiding the weight. The realization landed gently, then broke her open. She sank onto the couch, documents spilling onto the floor like evidence of a love neither of them had known how to speak. She hadn't married a man who took her for granted. She married a man who disappeared into responsibility so completely that even his pain went unnoticed. Tears slid down her cheeks, not sharp, not bitter. Regretful. Tender. Across town, Ethan stood in the community center kitchen, washing mugs after another long Tuesday. Noah sat nearby, coloring quietly. You ever miss people? Noah asked suddenly, without looking up. Ethan paused, then nodded. Yeah, sometimes. But you can't go back, Noah said. No, Ethan agreed. But you can understand what you didn't before. Noah thought about that, then went back to coloring. That night, Lily called. Ethan answered on the second ring. Hey. Her voice came soft, shaken. I found the papers. He didn't ask which ones. I didn't know, she said. You never told me. I didn't want you to feel like you owed me anything, he replied quietly. A long silence followed. Full, not empty. If that realization just hit you in the chest, she continued, voice breaking, leave a red heart. Some truths don't hurt because they're cruel. They hurt because they're beautiful and late. Ethan swallowed. Lily, I'm not calling to reopen wounds, she said quickly. I just needed you to know. I see you now. His eyes closed. For a moment, neither of them spoke. They didn't need to. The past wasn't rewriting itself, but it was finally understood. I'm proud of you, she added, for the way you're showing up now. And I'm proud of you, he said, for choosing yourself. They hung up gently. Days later, Ethan received a letter. Handwritten, from Judge Merrick. It was brief. Mr. Cole, I don't usually write to people after cases conclude, but some stories linger. I want you to know, what you and your former wife showed in that courtroom reminded me why I became a judge. You chose dignity over victory. That matters. Take care of the good you carry. The world needs it. Ethan read it twice, then folded it carefully and placed it in a drawer beside Noah's latest drawing. Life continued. Not louder, not easier, but clearer. Lily began mentoring a new hire at work. Ethan took on more responsibility at the center. Both of them moved forward carrying something precious. Awareness. Not blame. Not nostalgia. Understanding. And in that understanding, a quiet peace took root. They weren't meant to find their way back to each other. They were meant to finally see each other, clearly, so they could walk forward without ghosts. Spring deepened. The lemon flower fell, replaced by the smallest green fruit. Growth didn't announce itself. It just happened. And somewhere beneath it all, forgiveness was no longer a question. It was already unfolding. The first real heat of summer arrived without warning. It clung to the city, heavy and breathless, pressing itself into open windows and restless nights. Ethan lay awake more often now, not from sadness, but from a strange alertness. Life felt close to changing again, like a held note that hadn't resolved. On a Thursday afternoon, the community center director pulled him aside. "There's an opening," she said carefully. "Full-time coordinator. It's a step up. More responsibility." Ethan blinked. "I'm not sure I'm ready." She smiled knowingly. People rarely are. But readiness isn't the same as capability. He thought of Noah, of the hospital chair, of promises kept simply by showing up. "I'll think about it," he said. That evening, Lily stood in a grocery store aisle, staring blankly at two nearly identical jars of pasta sauce. A small, absurd decision, but her chest felt tight anyway. She realized she'd been standing there for minutes. A wave of dizziness passed through her. She steadied herself against the cart, breathing slowly. It passed, but left behind unease. At home, she ignored it, told herself it was stress, heat, anything but fear. But the next morning, it returned, stronger. By noon, she was sitting in a quiet examination room, paper gown crinkling beneath her fingers as she waited. The doctor spoke kindly, professionally, but Lily barely heard him. "We'll need to run more tests," he said. "It could be nothing, but it's best we're thorough." The word thorough echoed. That night, Lily didn't call Ethan. She stared at her phone more than once, but stopped herself. They had both built new ground. She didn't want to shake it with uncertainty. Across town, Ethan signed the job acceptance email before he could overthink it. His hand shook slightly as he hit send. Growth, he reminded himself, was allowed. 3 days later, Lily collapsed at work. It wasn't dramatic. No screaming. Just a sudden loss of strength, knees giving way like her body had quietly decided it had held enough. She woke in a hospital bed, for humming beside her, ceiling tiles unfamiliar and too white. Diagnosis came slowly, carefully. An autoimmune condition. Manageable, but serious. Chronic. Something that would require treatment, rest, and adjustment. "You'll need support," the doctor said gently. Lily nodded, staring at her hands. Support. She thought of her sister, already on her way. Friends. Co-workers. And then, despite herself, she thought of Ethan. She didn't call him. Not yet. Weeks passed. Treatment began. Lily grew thinner, quieter. The lemon tree on her balcony drooped slightly in the heat, its tiny fruit still clinging stubbornly. One afternoon, Ethan received a message from Lily's sister. "She didn't want me to tell you, but I think you should know. Lily's sick, hospitalized last month. She's stable, but it's been hard." The words blurred. Ethan didn't hesitate. He drove straight to the hospital, heart pounding, not with panic but purpose. When he stepped into Lily's room, she looked up slowly. Shock flickered across her face. Then something softer, something like relief she didn't give herself permission to ask for. "You didn't have to come," she said weakly. "I wanted to," he replied simply. He pulled a chair closer. Not too close. Respectful. Present. They talked about small things at first, the lemon tree, Noah, the new job. Then silence filled the space, thick but not awkward. Finally, Lily spoke. "I didn't call because I didn't want to need you again." Ethan met her gaze. Needing someone isn't the same as depending on them. Her eyes filled. "I'm scared." "I know," he said. A long pause passed. "Be honest. Could you forgive after everything that happened between them? Type forgive if you could, or never if it would break you too deeply." Ethan stood, walked to the window, then back. He took a breath. I don't want to fix anything, he said quietly. I'm not here to undo the past. I'm here because I care about you. That never stopped. Lily's tears slipped free. I don't deserve that. None of us earned compassion, he replied. That's what makes it real. From that day on, Ethan visited but never imposed. Brought books, soup, quiet company. Sometimes they talked. Sometimes they didn't. There were no promises, no labels, just presence. And something else, fragile, terrifying, and honest, began to surface. Trust, not the old kind. A new one, built without expectation, built on truth. As Lily grew stronger, she noticed something unexpected within herself. Not longing, not regret. Gratitude for what they had been, for what they had learned, for what they were choosing now. One evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the hospital room gold, Lily turned to Ethan. I don't know what this means, she said. Ethan nodded. We don't have to name it. Outside, the city moved on, unaware, relentless, alive. Inside that quiet room, two people stood at the edge of something fragile. Not reconciliation, but redemption. Lily was discharged on a quiet Monday morning. No balloons, no dramatic goodbyes. Just a nurse smiling, paperwork signed, and sunlight spilling across the hospital floor like a promise that didn't need words. Ethan carried her bag, not because she asked, but because it felt natural. Outside, the air was warm but gentle. Summer had softened itself. You don't have to walk me up, Lily said when they reached her building. I know, Ethan replied, but I can. She didn't argue. Inside her apartment, the lemon tree stood near the balcony door, leaves brighter now, fruit slightly larger. Lily paused in front of it, touching one leaf with careful fingers. It almost didn't make it, she said. But it did, Ethan answered. Be sure to look, not about the tree. Recovery unfolded slowly. Some days Lily felt almost normal. Other days, fatigue pressed her back into bed before noon. Ethan adjusted without discussion. Groceries appeared, meals left quietly on the counter, check-ins sent without expectation of reply. He never stayed too long. That mattered. One evening, Lily insisted on cooking. It was simple, soup, bread, but she insisted. They ate at the small table, lights spilling in from the balcony, the city humming outside. This feels strange, she said, smiling faintly. Not bad. Just new. Ethan nodded. New doesn't have to mean fragile. She studied him. You've changed. So have you. They let that truth rest between them. Weeks later, Lily attended one of the community center events. Her first time out for something that wasn't medical. Kids ran past her laughing. Noah waved enthusiastically when he spotted Ethan. That's him, Ethan said quietly. The one I told you about. Lily watched Noah talk animatedly, hands flying. He trusts you. I earned it, Ethan said. Slowly, she smiled. You always were patient. As the sun dipped low, parents arrived, children dispersed, and the building settled into evening calm. Lily sat on a bench outside, breathing evenly. I used to think endings meant we failed, she said softly. Now I think maybe they just teach us how to begin better. Ethan didn't answer right away. When he did, his voice was steady. I think some love stories aren't meant to be lived forward. They're meant to be understood. She looked at him then, not searching, not hoping, just present. Thank you, she said, for not disappearing. He met her gaze. Thank you for letting me stay, without asking me to save you. That night, Lily dreamed without fear for the first time in months. Autumn returned quietly. The lemon tree bore its first real fruit. Small, imperfect, but bright. Lily harvested it carefully, hands trembling, not from weakness, but emotion. She held it like something sacred. She texted Ethan a photo. It finally grew, she wrote. His reply came quickly. So did you. They didn't rush anything. Healing had taught them that timing wasn't something to fight. One Sunday morning, Lily joined Ethan at the community center, officially this time. She volunteered to help with reading. Noah watched her cautiously at first, then warmed. She's nice, he told Ethan later. Ethan smiled. I know. Lily overheard and laughed quietly. If you believe love still wins, comment amen. Let's fill this space with hope. Someone reading this might need it more than we know. Winter approached again, but it didn't feel like an ending. One evening, after a long day, Ethan and Lily stood on her balcony. City lights flickered below. The lemon tree rested between them. "I don't know what the future looks like," Lily said. Ethan nodded. "Neither do I." She took a breath. "But I know this. Whatever comes next, I don't want it built on silence." He turned toward her fully. "Neither do I." They stood there, close but not clinging. Two people who had learned the cost of unspoken love and the quiet power of honesty. Nothing was promised. Everything was possible. And in that stillness, hope didn't shout. It simply stayed. Winter settled in gently this time, not with storms or bitterness, but with quiet mornings and pale sunlight stretching across frost-tipped windows. Lily's health stabilized. Some days were still heavy, but the fear no longer ruled her body or her thoughts. She learned her limits, learned how to rest without guilt. Ethan learned something too. That love didn't always announce itself with grand gestures. Sometimes it showed up in folded blankets, refilled prescriptions, shared silence that felt safe instead of empty. They never moved back in together. That choice was deliberate. Instead, they built something slower. Coffee on Saturdays, long walks when Lily felt strong enough, late-night phone calls where honesty replaced assumptions. They spoke when something hurt. They paused when something felt unclear. No guessing. No quiet resentment. One evening, months later, Ethan stood in his apartment staring at a small envelope in his hand. Inside was an offer letter from a nonprofit expanding its youth program statewide. A promotion. More responsibility. More travel. More distance. He didn't panic. He called Lily. They met at the park halfway between their homes. Snow dusted the ground lightly, crunching beneath their shoes. The city glowed around them, alive and indifferent. "I got an offer," Ethan said, handing her the letter. She read it carefully, then smiled. "That's amazing," she said honestly. "It means I'll be gone a lot," he added. "Not disappearing, but less present." She nodded slowly. "Thank you for telling me before deciding." He met her eyes. "I wanted to know how it felt to say it out loud with you." They stood quietly. Lily folded the letter and handed it back. "You should take it. You're sure?" "Yes," she said. "Because this time, it's not running away. It's stepping forward." He exhaled, a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. "I don't want to lose what we're building," he admitted. She smiled softly. "We won't, because we're not building it on fear anymore." Snow drifted between them, slow, unhurried. They hugged then, longer than usual, still careful, still honest. That night, Lily stood on her balcony, watching the lemon tree sway slightly in the cold. The fruit had been harvested, the branches resting. She thought of the woman she had been, afraid to speak, afraid to need, afraid that love meant silence. She wasn't that woman anymore. And Ethan, he thought of the man he had been, quiet to the point of erasing himself. Strong but unseen. He wasn't that man anymore either. They had lost a marriage, but they had found something rarer. Clarity. If this story moved you, don't scroll past quietly. Tap like, "Not for me, but for the soul who carried this pain and still stayed kind." One click can be your way of saying, "I felt you." Stories like this deserve to be seen because someone out there is living one right now. Spring came again. Not loudly, just steadily. Ethan accepted the offer. Lily cheered him on. They planned around distance instead of letting it become a wedge. Visits were intentional. Conversations deeper. One afternoon, as Lily watered the lemon tree, her phone rang. "Ethan, I'm coming home early this weekend," he said. "I want to show you something." When he arrived, he didn't bring flowers. He brought a small wooden plaque. He placed it beside the lemon tree. It read, "Here, it grew something that survived." Lily covered her mouth, tears welling. Not from sadness, but recognition. "I don't know what will be in 10 years, Ethan said quietly. "But I know this. I don't want to walk forward without truth again. Ever." She nodded, tears slipping free. "Neither do I." They stood together, not bound by vows, not defined by labels. Just two people who had learned the hardest lesson love could teach. That kindness doesn't mean silence. That sacrifice doesn't mean disappearance. That sometimes losing everything familiar is the only way to finally see clearly. And somewhere, far back in memory, a judge sat at a desk, flipping through papers, never knowing that by noticing one last name on a deed, he didn't just divide a house. He uncovered truth, one that set two hearts free, not to return to what was, but to finally live what could be.